It's time for another episode of the Shaun Tabatt Show, a podcast where I connect you with thought leaders from across the globe, dig into some of my favorite topics like personal development, marketing, spirituality, and pretty much any other shiny object that happens to catch my attention. Today, my very special guest is Meerman Scott, and we're going to be discussing his recent book, Fanocracy, Turning Fans into Customers and Customers into Fans. David, it's truly an honor. I've been a fan for many years. Welcome to the show.
I'm honored that I'm a shiny object. So thanks for having me on, Shaun.
You know, just like a raccoon, I am attracted to shiny objects. What can I say? They get my attention. Nice. I always like to kick off each conversation by uncovering a bit of the author's origin story. So for you, David, for those who are encountering you for the very first time, what are a few things they need to know about you?
I started in the bond trading world. I did bond trading for a couple of years. I was absolutely terrible at it and I hated it. But that led me behind the scenes of bond trading, and I loved the real-time information. So I worked for companies like Dow Jones and Reuters and other similar companies for about 15 years, based 10 years in Asia. I was in Tokyo for 7 years, Hong Kong for 2, and then moved back to the US and worked in that industry for a couple more years. And it gave me an unfair advantage and a big fat head start on what became web-based marketing and social media, because I had been using or working in the real-time information industry way before the web. So started on my own in 18 years ago, 2002, and have written so far 11 books, which is kind of remarkable. And I focus on marketing and public relations. But I try to bring in all kinds of different radical ideas around these things, and try to bring in other personal experiences, such as the fact that I've been to 804 live music concerts as of this moment, as we're doing this, and 75 Grateful Dead concerts.
That's fantastic. Well, and as somebody who's read a number of your books, you bring in unexpected elements, stories I sometimes wouldn't have thought of to bring into a marketing book. Personally, I've been in the marketing space, specifically related to publishing, for about a decade now. And when I talk to other authors and thought leaders who have been at it for a long time, sometimes 1, 2, 3 decades, I'm always curious, what about the marketing and PR space has held your attention, your interest? What's kept kind of fueling that passion as you've been at it year after year after year?
What's fascinating to me is that the overall strategies that I've been talking about, teaching, speaking about, writing books about, haven't changed for 20 years. And that is that one of the best ways to reach people is on the web. And one of the best ways to reach people is by creating things that are interesting on the web, blog posts, videos, whatever it might be, great websites, anything like that. And that doesn't change, but what's constantly changing are the tools that we have available to us. So I love the fact that, we're constantly changing, but at the same time, the strategies are all about generating attention. That's not going away. Recently, I've been so fascinated with the idea of fandom and how when any kind of organization can do those things we just talked about well, that they build fans. And absolutely fascinating to me. I've been to 75 Grateful Dead concerts. What's going on there? And what can we learn from that?
Well, and one of the unique aspects of this book that I wanted to bring out is that you got to actually collaborate with your daughter on this project. Yeah. I'm a father of 10 kids, so I always love to see it when 10. People collaborate with their kids. Yeah, 10. The doors are locked. There's no naked toddlers going to be running in, hopefully, for our conversation today. But I'd love to hear a little bit about what was it like to collaborate with her on a project, and what were some of the unique strengths that brought to the project with those two voices coming together?
Yeah, it was fabulous, actually, because I'm a 50-something white man who loves the Grateful Dead, and my daughter Reiko is a 27-year-old millennial mixed race. My wife's Japanese, her mother's Japanese. Reiko was born in Tokyo. Millennial woman who loves Harry Potter and getting dressed up at Comic-Con. She's also a scientist. She did a neuroscience degree at Columbia University as an undergraduate, just graduated from Boston University School of Medicine and will be in the next probably 2 weeks an emergency room resident at Boston Medical Center. So on one hand, we had the exact same idea about fandom and the things we love and how interesting it is for us to be fans of something. But on the other hand, we're utterly and totally different. So working together was fabulous. It was a fabulous experience. It took us a little while to find our stride because we worked on this project for about 5 years, research and writing. And initially, she's now 27. So initially, she was sort of just graduating from undergraduate, and I paid for that. She lives in my house. And so, there's that natural hierarchical relationship that comes from a child that's depended on you for many things over the years. And we realized very, very quickly that we couldn't write that way. It had to be 100% equal. She had to be willing to tell me that something I wrote wasn't working, and she did. I had to be willing to recognize that she is better at me as a writer in many ways, which I did. And then that finally made it better. And the other thing, because you're in publishing, you could recognize this. We had trouble initially with how to do voice. And initially, we wrote it with one narrative in one voice. And we did probably about 3/4 of a draft of the book that way, and it just wasn't working. So we ripped it all up and started fresh, and she wrote half the chapters and I wrote half the chapters, and we actually sign each chapter. Chapter 7 by Reiko, Chapter 8 by David, and so on. And that made it way better because our readers can learn much more about who each one of us are. But then also it allows her strong, wonderful voice to come through and my okay voice to come through. And people recognize as they're reading a particular story, whose story it is, without us trying to smooth all that over, which wasn't working when we first tried to do that. So we're so happy that we persevered and didn't just try to get it out quickly, but, it was like a 1-year false start that we had to kind of reverse ourselves on. But it worked out fine in the end, and we're glad we did it.
Well, and I think that's a challenge a lot of co-authored books come up against, especially, I feel like it can be especially difficult if it's a husband and wife or a parent and child, where there's usually some kind of an interesting dynamic structure to the relationship that can impact the voices. And so I like that you wanted to be sure that your daughter's voice came across loud and strong and as powerfully as it needed to. I felt like that was executed beautifully in the audiobook where it was alternating with the chapters. You'd get to hear the voice.
Yeah, and that's the other yeah, exactly. And that's the other thing that we did was we chose to read it ourselves. And Reiko reads her chapters. Of course, I read my chapters. But that was also another really important decision for us was to do the reading ourselves. And we worked with a great team that was able to get that to be as good as it can be.
Well, in a moment, I want to get to a couple of the different companies you profile in the book, but big picture, in terms of whether we're talking organizations, services, individuals, what was that, say, standout quality or that spark that you were looking for that told you, wow, this is a story that needs to be in the book? There had to be something that identified those folks to you.
Yeah, we came at it with a thesis, the thesis being that any organization can build fans in the same way that Harry Potter, the Grateful Dead built fans. That was the thesis. So our research was, is this true? Can we identify that this is true? And we quickly did. We found examples of nonprofits and B2B companies and government agencies. We found a U.S. government agency that has 50 million fans. You can be walking down the street in any city in the world and not be surprised to see someone heading towards you wearing a NASA t-shirt, NASA logo t-shirt. Amazing. A U.S. government agency. We found an insurance company that does automobile insurance. They're called Hagerty. They do classic car auto insurance. They have over 1 million fans. They educate people at classic car events. They have a YouTube channel with over 1 million followers. And this is an industry that everybody hates, because I frequently ask people at my events, both live and virtual, do you love your insurance company? And very few people say yes. Yet here's an insurance company that has over 1 million fans. So what we were looking for are organizations that have built a fandom. So what does a fandom mean? Basically, when we did the analysis, we spoke with some neuroscientists, and the idea of fandom is all humans are hardwired to want to be part of a tribe of like-minded people. And when we're part of our tribe, I'm in a Grateful Dead concerts, it's amazing. And every person there is part of the same tribe. Haggerty Insurance has built a tribe of like-minded people who love classic cars and love Haggerty as an insurance company that provides valuable information about classic cars. People love NASA. There are a tribe of people who love NASA. So that was the unifying factor. And once we figured out that unifying factor, we were able to find examples in all kinds of different industries and companies and organizations and nonprofits and doctors and dentists and lawyers and the whole thing.
Well, one of the standout companies to me, at least in the book, was MeUndies. I mean, now, if you're a podcast listener, inevitably you've heard MeUndies advertisements on somebody's podcast. It's impossible to miss them. But I'd love to have you just talk about what are some of the things they get right in terms of partnering with and connecting with their fans. Because, gosh, who needs a subscription underwear service? I mean, it's something you wouldn't even think you need, let alone there's a fan base around it.
And we were surprised going into it that we found an underwear company. And, because underwear is one of those commodities, and at least for men, maybe not so much for women, but mostly for men, it's like, oh God, they've got a hole, I need a new pair. But I started my subscription probably 3 years ago, and every month a new pair arrives. They know my size. I choose a particular category. Then they give me a choice of 30 or 40 pair in that category and different patterns, and I choose the pattern that I like. And I love it. I absolutely love it. I can't wait to spend $16 a month on underwear. It's kind of silly, but I really do love it. And so they've created a tribe of people, just like I talked about. You go to their Instagram. I haven't looked recently, but something between 300,000 and 500,000 people subscribe to their Instagram. And a lot of it is real people sharing pictures of themselves in their underwear. And many times it's groups of people, because what they've done is they've created the same pattern of underwear as his and hers. So sometimes it's couples, sometimes it's groups of friends, multiple people who are cavorting, like imagine an 11-year-old slumber party, but with adults, cavorting inside, outside. It's just kind of really cool. And they're not models. They're people who have just sent in their images of themselves doing this, and they share them like crazy. And their slogan is, and I don't know the exact number of million right now, but their slogan is something like 12 million happy butts and going strong, or 13 million happy butts and going strong, whatever number they're at right now, which you also have to love, just because they're kind of poking a little bit of fun at themselves. And I just think they're putting together a lot of the cool stuff that we talk about in Fanocracy, and they've turned their customers into their fans. And it's super, super awesome, because it's in a category that most people aren't fans of their underwear company.
Well, let's go to a sort of a different extreme, and that's with Duracell's Power Forward campaign. That was altruistic. They're giving things away. They're not selling things, when the situations they're injecting themselves into would be circumstances where you could take advantage of people because they're in so much need. Right. So tell us a little bit about that, and what sort of positive momentum does that build for their brand?
Sure. And I've actually got an update since the book came out. I spoke with Ramon a couple of days ago. Duracell battery company, it's a commodity. Most people think one battery is just like another battery. So how do they build fans? How do they build a differentiation between their battery and other batteries? And they have a program called Power Forward, where they give away batteries for free to people who are victims of natural disasters or other similar sorts of things. So earthquake, fire, flood, tornado victims, and so on. When the power goes out, you need batteries. And it's one of those times that humans are like, oh, shoot, the power's out. Power's been out for 3 days. I don't know when the power's coming back on. I had a couple of batteries, but my flashlight's already dead. What do I do now? And so they have a fleet of trucks, and the trucks are deployed wherever there's an outage, and they give away batteries for free, completely for free. And like you said, they could have been selling those batteries. They could have tried to gouge people and sold them for twice as much as you normally would pay. And by the way, all the stores are sold out instantly in these situations. So you can't buy batteries. And so they give the batteries away. They went down to Puerto Rico right after Hurricane Maria. They actually airlifted their trucks down to Puerto Rico and gave away literally tons and tons of batteries. So now, during the COVID-19 situation that we're all facing right now, they've given away, this number is remarkable to me, they've given away 10.5 million batteries. As of a couple of days ago when I spoke with Ramon, 10.5 million batteries to people in need. And they go to first responders, they go to the healthcare workers, and they also did something super cool. They set up charging stations in hospital waiting rooms, because what they learned is that when people go to the hospital, they said, oh my gosh, my loved one is ill. I got to get to the hospital now. They go to the hospital and they bring their mobile phone. That's one of the first things they put in their pocket, but they almost always forget the charger, and they don't know how long they're going to be there. And it turns out they may be there 24, 48 hours waiting to find out what's going on. Their power drains. So Duracell has put these power charging stations in hospital waiting rooms specifically for the relatives of the patients in the hospital. Now, all of this, what it does is it builds fans, because people remember that it was Duracell that helped them in a time of need. And so in the book, we've got about a dozen chapters, and each of those chapters is a particular prescription for one way to build fans. This particular way is to give gifts and be kind to people with absolutely no expectation of anything in return. And that's the key. No expectation of anything in return, because a lot of companies are like, oh yeah, we're going to give you something, but it's not really a gift because we expect you to do something in return. A perfect example of that, by the way, are these companies that offer free white papers, but they're not really free because you have to give an email address in order to get it. That's the opposite of what we're talking about. That actually does not build fans. It does the opposite. It sets up an adversarial relationship. You're not actually giving away that white paper. You're demanding an email address first. So we love this idea of giving gifts, and it's especially poignant right now during the pandemic, that there are a lot of brands out there that are simply giving things away. Another example is New Balance. They completely changed up one of their factories here in Massachusetts, where I live, from building clothing and shoes to being able to build masks. And they're selling them at cost to local hospitals. They're not giving them away, but they're selling them at cost. They're not making any profit from it. And so that's, I believe, in the same vein of giving things away with no expectation of anything in return. They want to be able to keep the factory open, so they do need to cover their cost, but at the same time, they're not trying to make a profit off of the pandemic.
As somebody who works in marketing and have worked in the sales space as well, I feel like we often think we know our customers well, but when we start to get closer to our customers, we're like, wow, there's a lot of conversation going on and things going on that we weren't aware of. So, regardless of whether I'm an author or a small company or a large organization, if I discover this fan base has grown up around a brand or a product, what should I do? How should I try to engage? Because I think if we all dig a little bit, we might be surprised what's happening around some of our products and offerings that we actually aren't aware of right now.
I think that's actually absolutely right. That I think most organizations at least have pockets of fans, and if you're doing a whole bunch of things right, like some of the examples that I shared, Haggerty or MeUndies or Duracell, you probably got potentially millions of fans. So the first thing that to recognize is that once you put a product or a service or an idea out there, it belongs to the fans. You can't control it. It no longer belongs to you. So you need to recognize that whatever way the fans choose to want to interact and how to describe and how to celebrate what they love around your product or service or an idea, that is important to recognize that that's the way the fans choose to interact, even though it may not be the way that you intended for the product to be used or the way that you intended for people to talk. And that's something I think that a lot of people who work in companies tend to ignore, because they say, oh, here's how we built it. This is the language you should be using. This is the accepted use of this product. And then all of a sudden you find out people are using it for a different purpose. And another thing is that you should recognize and celebrate fans for doing those things. And one of the easy manifestations of that is just recognizing people on social media who talk about you in positive ways or even talk about you in negative ways. I can't tell you how many times I've talked about a brand in social media and never hear from that brand. You know, they don't acknowledge the fact that I've just shared something. And so I think that you should be recognizing that if somebody takes the time to say something about you, about your company, about your products, about your services, about your ideas, that in most cases it's worth it to reply back, to respond back, to share, to like, to do whatever it is, and based on the social network they've done that in.
And in the book, you cover a diverse range of companies and situations. Is there any industry or, kind of company value exchange scenario where the concepts of fanocracy aren't applicable? Is there anything that goes outside of the boundary?
We haven't found anything. It's been pretty interesting that way. And that's why I find it so interesting when we look at all of these different types of organizations. And I mentioned an auto insurance company, a business everyone hates. I mentioned a government agency, NASA, have huge numbers of fans. A consumer product company in Duracell, underwear people don't like. Never mind the things that people love, like a rock band, the Grateful Dead or whatever. And so I think that these ideas are applicable for everybody. I had an opportunity a couple of years ago to meet a dentist. His name is Dr. John Marashi. I met him at a speaking gig. I speak at Tony Robbins' Business Mastery events around the world. And he saw me talk. He saw me talking about the idea of building fans and using social media. And he said, David, after the talk, he came up to me and said, David, I'm a dentist. I don't have fans. What are you talking about? He said there's 10,000 dentists in Southern California. How the heck do I break out? So I said, Dr. Marashi, what do you love to do? And the reason I asked him this question is because one thing we learned in our research is the idea that passion is infectious. Passion is infectious. And people who are passionate about what they do, passionate about not just their work, but what they love to do on their off time, that passion is infectious, even if you don't share the same passion with other people. For example, I'm just going to fast forward on these slides here a little bit. I'm a huge fan of the Grateful Dead, as I mentioned. It's a picture of the Grateful Dead right there. And this is my buddy Brian. And, passionate about the Grateful Dead. Brian is the CEO of HubSpot. It's an $8 billion market cap, New York Stock Exchange listed company. And Brian and I are both passionate about this band that we love. And we share that passion with the world. And, we talk about it in public. We don't hide it. So I said to Dr. Marashi, what do you love to do? And he says, I love to skateboard. I said, wow, you love to skateboard. How cool is that? Tell me about skateboarding. Oh, yeah, I've been doing it since I was a kid. I do it all the time. It's one of my favorite things. I said, well, that's it. You're not one of 10,000 dentists in Southern California. Celebrate the fact that you love to skateboard. So Dr. Marashi hung some of his skateboards on the walls in his practice. He skateboards from one examination room to another. On his website, he has pictures of him skateboarding. He put together an Instagram. And last time I checked, it's nearly 15,000 subscribers to his Instagram, a dentist. Most of the picture, not most, but many of the pictures on his Instagram are him skateboarding. He contacted me a couple months ago, after this was 3 years ago that we first met, a couple months ago, and said, David, I just want to thank you, because the idea of showcasing what I love on social media, the idea that I'm a skateboarding dentist, I'm now not one of 10,000 dentists in Southern California. I'm the skateboarding dentist. And he said that one thing alone, sharing what he's passionate about, has grown his number of new patients by 30% in the last year. And he's able to measure that 30% growth just by sharing what he's passionate about. So who knows? There may be a business that these ideas don't work for, but whenever anyone says to me, "Oh my gosh, I'm an auto insurance company. What the hell can I do? I'm a lawyer, a doctor, a dentist. What can I do?" I mean, there's always found examples of people who have succeeded with these ideas.
David, you had mentioned earlier that the research, the writing journey with Fanocracy was a 5-year journey. I've talked to hundreds of authors. I work with hundreds of authors every year in my day job. And I know that writing changes somebody. The process of birthing a book, it shifts what you do. You're different on the other side. So I'd be curious to hear, this far out, the book's been out for a while. Is there anything you've shifted or that you do differently to contribute to your own personal success as an author, as a business owner? Anything that changed on this side of Fanocracy for you?
Absolutely. And it goes back to, I think, one of your very first questions is that my daughter and I wrote the book together. And so I mentioned when we first started our research about 5 years ago, she was 22 at the time, either 21 or 22, and just gotten out of university, which I paid the bills for. And then 5 years later, she's in her own house, supporting herself, and we have developed this wonderful relationship. And that's changed a lot. I think the relationship probably would have changed anyway as she grew up over the last 5 years and graduated from med school. She got married. Those things would have happened. But the fact that we dug in together on this book and we shared things together was a truly fabulous experience. And it was for her too, because we've spoken about it before together. And I'm just so thrilled that we did it together, and that we've shared in the fact that we've created this thing into the world. The book hit the Wall Street Journal bestseller list, and helping my daughter to become a Wall Street Journal bestselling author, and her helping me to become one. What a wonderful thing to do. And I look back at her. She's 27 years old. She's a Wall Street Journal bestselling author and an MD, which, I'm a proud bragging father, but holy cow, how crazy is that? When I was 27, it was like, where's the next beer? It's like so different.
The thing I touched on this earlier, but what I really love by bringing your two voices together, I feel like you really show how this idea of fandoms, it's not any one generation. By having different voices from different generations share where they themselves are fans in the book, I feel like it shows how this is applicable across all different strata, spheres of society, if you will. So very, very helpful.
Thank you. And that was so important to have done with her as being a part of it, because, as you know, because you're a writing professional, a writer can write about other viewpoints other than their own if they research enough. So I could probably have figured out what does a Gen Z or millennial generation woman love about Harry Potter and written about that. But having a millennial generation woman write about her love of Harry Potter, way different. So, so it was really a cool thing to have those different perspectives, and the perspective of a neuroscientist, MD, as well. Just really, really cool.
And David, for the listeners, the viewers who'd like to connect with you, find out more about the book, where are some of the places we can hang out with you on the web?
I'll give a couple. So first of all, to learn more about the book, Fanocracy, You can go to fanocracy.com, and we've got some videos, we've got some downloads, a bunch of stuff on the website to learn a little bit more about the book itself. I'm at davidmeermanscott.com. And then on most of the social networks, I am DM Scott, DMSCOTT.
And like we do with every episode, we'll have detailed links in the show notes, places where you can connect with David and pick up your own copy of the book. It's time to bring this episode of the Shaun Tabatt Show to a close. Many thanks for being a part of my conversation today with David Meerman Scott. Once again, our book today was Fanocracy, Turning Fans into Customers and Customers into Fans. If you'd like to connect with David and find out more, a great place to start is his website. You can find that over at davidmeermanscott.com. If you want information specifically about the book, head on over to fanocracy.com. And David, I just want to say thank you so much for sharing with us today. It's truly been an honor to have you on the show.
Thanks, Shaun. I really appreciate it.